welcome back, everyone. I'm Helen Zorbas. I'm a very proud director of the Hellenic Initiative Australia, and I'm the moderator of the Health and Science panel this morning. We have four amazingly talented women of Greek heritage who have transformed their fields through innovation, discovery and leadership. Individually, they're brilliant. Collectively, their achievements are mind-blowing. A constant thread across all their brilliant careers is scientific research. And as per previous panels, I have to hark back to the ancient Greeks because, of course, all scientists of today are indebted to ancient Greeks. Hippocrates, who pioneered observation and clinical trials, looking for the causes of ailments rather than believing that illness was a punishment or retribution from the gods. And, of course, Aristotle, the godfather of evidence-based medicine, who pioneered scientific method thousands of years ago. Research is a tough, challenging career path, requiring the kind of tenacity and passion that, as we've heard, is perhaps part of our DNA. So I'd like you to help me in welcoming our panellists. Professor Maria Kavallaris, AM. Professor Maria Makrides. Professor Vasso Apostolopoulos, AM. And Dr. Melina Georgousakis. These four brilliant women have each forged their own distinct and quite different path that has delivered a legacy of societal impact. I'll just take my seat. So Maria Kavallaris, Maria, I'd love to start with you because your path was in fact quite unusual and definitely not linear. Could you share with us a bit about your not-so-conventional pathway and the deeply personal experience that forged or inspired your career direction?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Ambassador, and everyone involved in organising this event. It's a real privilege to be here. So just a quick way of introduction. I'm a first-generation Australian. I was born here in Australia. My parents came from Cyprus. And we spent a little bit of time in Cyprus when I was a kid, only to return when the war broke out in Cyprus. My parents lost everything and started all over again. So it was quite an interesting upbringing. So Helen touched on my unusual pathway. I left year 10. I didn't do my HSC. I actually left to do a pathology technician's course at TAFE. And as part of that course, I had to actually do some training in a lab. But, you know, I was so young, I was 16, that no one was going to employ a 16-year-old. So there weren't many jobs. But fortuitously, I got my first job at a university in Sydney, and I actually got to work in a medical research lab. And I suddenly realised there was this sort of whole world out there that I could sort of join, and I could go on and do my undergraduate degree and my PhD afterwards. So what I did is I finished my TAFE course and then I started pursuing an undergraduate degree part-time. And by then I'd actually moved to the University of New South Wales. And in my first year of my undergraduate course, life took a little bit of a turn in that I was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 21. And just as I was going through my own treatment, which was pretty aggressive and brutal, and often required me to be back in hospital multiple times, the head of my lab actually got the opportunity to lead the Children's Cancer Institute. It was a brand new organisation, and I had the opportunity to join him. And when I actually went to join him there, I met a lot of families and I met a lot of children that were actually going through the same sort of treatment that I was going through. And I could see the impact for those kids, and it really struck me that, well, I'm 21, I understand what's going on. Didn't like it, but I understood what was going on. And these poor kids couldn't understand why their parents were dragging them to hospital, essentially to make them sick. I mean, it was to make them better, but it was to make them sick. That's how they saw it. And I really decided then and there that I was going to finish my undergraduate degree. I was going to get better. That was the first thing I had to do. The second was that I would finish my undergraduate degree and I would do a PhD because I really wanted to make a difference and design better treatments, less toxic treatments for children with cancer. And that really sort of forged my path, and that's what I did. I got better. I went through I finished my undergraduate degree part-time over 6 years, because I'm a glutton for punishment. And then I enrolled in my PhD part-time as well, which I actually managed to get done in 4 years. And I was pretty determined. I was really driven by the cause and spent a couple of years overseas in the United States where I did advanced cancer research training and came back to Australia where I've been pursuing my research career and trying to make a difference for childhood cancer.
Wow. That's quite an extraordinary story, Maria. And now here you are, a globally recognised leader in cancer biology and particularly in nanomedicine. You might want to tell us what that is. And you've been awarded almost every imaginable international accolade. Can you nail which achievement of all of your achievements is the one that you're most proud of and why? Tell us a bit about nanomedicine to start with.
Well, maybe I should explain. So some of you may have heard about nanotechnology, at least the engineers in the audience will have. It's actually all around us, and it's in the paints, and it's a lot of devices. But we can actually exploit nanotechnology to make different things like sensors. So if anyone who's a diabetic uses a glucose sensor, that's a nanosensor because it's at the nanometer scale. So this is thousands of times smaller than a grain of sand. But we can also develop ways to deliver therapies to tumour cells using nanoparticles. So these are very small structures that we can load with cancer therapies, and we can actually target them to the tumour cells. And by doing this, we can give the therapy to tumour cells and spare the normal healthy cells, because many of the side effects that we talk about for children and adults with cancer when they're undergoing chemotherapy is because the chemotherapy works to kill fast-dividing cells, like cancer cells, but we also have normal cells that need to divide, and that's why you get toxicity. So we thought, well, what if we can actually target the therapy directly to the tumour cells and spare the normal healthy cells and stop the kids from getting sick? So we've been developing this approach. It's still under development, but we've made some really great inroads in this space. And our lab now is internationally recognised for the work that we do there. And we're still pursuing this. We're using, as many of you know, the RNA vaccines. With the COVID vaccine has really revolutionised and will continue to revolutionise how we're going to treat cancer in the future, at least for some of the cancers. It won't be for all cancers. But these technologies are really changing the face. So in 10 years' time, cancer therapy will not be how we see it today. So we're personalising the treatment to individual patients as well, targeting their specific tumour cells, not just a general approach, everyone gets the same treatment.
Amazing. Thank you, Maria. Now to our other Maria, Professor Maria Makrides. Maria, you had a different pathway. You migrated to Australia as a young girl from Cyprus with your family, and pretty quickly, as you've shared with us, realised that your school lunchbox looked very different to that of your classmates. Perhaps that's too simplistic a segue into a career in nutrition, but in all seriousness, your work has impacted on nutrition policy and practice globally, which is extraordinary. Can you share with us a couple of your personal career highlights and the impact of that work?
Sure, it's a pleasure to be here, and I too extend my thanks to the Ambassador to the Hellenic Initiative and acknowledge the traditional owners of this great land that we have such opportunities. I grew up in the western suburbs of Melbourne, and after finishing a science degree at the University of Melbourne, decided to go off to Adelaide to pursue a career in dietetics, nutrition and dietetics, and then ended up forging a research career. And I started my PhD really wanting to solve the issues of understanding the nutritional requirements of the omega-3 fats, which people might think of as fish or fish oils, as brain food for babies and young children. And I guess what I'm most proud of is the journey that I've been on for the last 30 odd years. Over that period of time, what I've managed to do with a great team of people over many years is a series of complex studies that have involved probably more than 20,000 families across Australia, where we've managed to delineate what the actual needs are for babies. And basically what we found is that if you're born healthy and at term, you need the more the vegetable oil type fats. You don't actually need the omega-3 fats that are, say, in fish oils. If you're born preterm, you need a bit of those for your brain development. And if you're born very preterm, we need to match what's exactly what the baby would get if it was in the womb, which is about 3 times the dose that's what's in breast milk. And those series of studies over the years have actually informed the guidelines, well, the recommendations, actually now legislated in law about what should be the minimum composition of infant foods and infant formulas in terms of the fat supply. As you can imagine, many a time it has been highly sensitive and political because people have wanted, particularly the industry, to have, if some is good, more is better, which hasn't always been the best outcome. So from our work, basically, legislation in terms of food law internationally for 188 countries, including every country in the European Union, the minimum levels of what's in infant formulas for different ages has actually come from a large part of our work. During that time, we also worked out that these omega-3 fats had a role to play in pregnancy. And for women who are depleted in these omega-3 fats, they're at higher risk of having a premature baby. So we're now at the, and the Australian guidelines were the first internationally to recognise that women who are depleted need supplementation. There's increasing recognition internationally, and we're doing some of the first implementation in Australia around specific supplementation to reduce risk of prematurity. So that's the journey, and that's what I'm really proud of.
Wow. Wow. And we're only halfway through the panel. Incredible. I was going to ask you about some challenges, but you clearly overcame them, whatever they were. And now to our very esteemed next panellist, Professor Vasso Apostolopoulos. Vasso, you're in the very top echelons of researchers globally, top 0.13% to be exact. It's really hard to imagine you as a child who wasn't good at and avoided writing. You've since then overcome that clearly. You have over 550 peer-reviewed publications and books to your name. But if I may, it was you shared with us a very different kind of challenge that you had mid-career that you had to confront, which I think will resonate with many of the women in the audience. And I wonder if you would share that to start with as part of that period of your life.
Yes. So in my career, I really rapidly went up the ladders, went up because my work was very successful. We went straight into human clinical trials. So in the early 1990s, we started clinical trials in various hospitals in Melbourne, in Queensland, in Europe, on a breast cancer vaccine. And we also did another one on an ovarian cancer vaccine, which the ovarian cancer vaccine is used overseas as a first-line treatment, immunotherapy. So everything was going well. I was publishing papers, I had grants, I had a full lab of postdocs and students and etc. So everything was looking good career-wise, because I was always work, and I had reached the top of my career. Then I got married and had a child. I had a baby. And 3 months after, I only took 3 months leave for my first baby. And mind you, I was working all those 3 months I wasn't really working from home. It wasn't called that at the time. But when I went back to work, I asked the director of the institute, and I said, can I please work 4 days a week? I will come to work 4 days. I will work from home 1 day because I wanted to be with my baby. And he's like, no, you cannot work from home. You have to be here because you're head of the lab, and ad hoc we will have meetings, and you need to be present at all time. There was no Google, there was no Zoom and all that stuff back then. So I thought, well, I want to spend time with my child. So I took every Thursdays off. I was sick. I was sick every Thursday because it just happened there was mother's group on Thursday.
I think that's called Greek ingenuity.
So there was mother's group on Thursday, and I'm like, I want to go because it's the new mums, first babies. I had no idea. I was 36 when I had my first child. That was old. All the others were like in the early 20s in the mother's group. But I wanted to be there. So I was sick every Thursday. I was sick for the next 5 years. I was sick. I had a backache. I was sick where they can't see it. I had a headache. I had a backache. I had some depression because they couldn't see it. Right? By 6 months later, on the Wednesday, they're like, okay, see you Friday. So they go. So anyway, that was okay with my first child. I sort of managed it okay. Then the other days, my mum and dad had my daughter. Then I had my second daughter, and that's where everything sort of just changed, where I couldn't handle it because it was just too much. I didn't know how to balance family, work, children, babies, my husband, it was forgotten, and work. And I just found it difficult to cope. There were no mechanisms at the time for women to be able to work and manage work, etc. So I decided to take a year and a half, it ended up being about 2 years, off from work. So I just left. I didn't tell my parents because my parents, they're the migrants. They were proud. Our daughter is doing well. And then all of a sudden, I'm not working. And it was like, I didn't know. Anyway, so I took a year and a half to 2 years off. By that time, slowly all the students went to other supervisors. The postdocs, they went elsewhere. So basically my whole lab, my grants finished. The whole lab was 45 people. They all sort of within the 2 years, it sort of went down to zero. I was at home. I was actually okay. I did some consulting work, which was okay. When I wanted to get back to work, I couldn't find a job. I could not find a job because at that level where I was, I had to go into the university at that level with a whole team behind me, with grants. The first question I'll be asked was, okay, so how many grants do you have? What do you have? How many students, postdocs, funding? That was the first question they'll ask me, and I'm like, I don't have any because it's all gone. I'm starting all over again. But at that level, I wouldn't get hired. And I'm world-renowned. By that point, I had 350 papers, which was a lot. I had $60 million worth of research funding, which is considered a lot in research. I was always asked globally to give talks, etc., but I couldn't find a job because they saw me that, I'm going, like there was no positions available at that level. But if I had my team and I had my money, of course I'll open up a position. So what did I do? I didn't care what level I was at. It didn't bother me what was my level. It didn't mean anything to me. So obviously I applied for jobs at the lower level, and I went to the lowest level, which was first year entry after your PhD, which what I was 20 years prior, okay? I applied for that level, and even then they're like, you're overqualified. So anyway, and I'm like, look, I don't care. Like, and they're like, oh, this is a stepping stone for you to go somewhere else. I said, no, the level does not mean anything to me. I just want to get back to work. So they gave me, I got a job, 3 days a week, only for 7 months, because someone had gone on maternity leave. And they're like, okay, that's it. That's all we're going to give you. Teaching only. I mean, my job was research, etc., etc. I said, okay. So I did my teaching, what I had to do 3 days a week. I was there 5 days a week, of course, and working all night. And within the 7 months, I brought in $6 million of funding. I funded my own salary, and I went straight up to the level I was. So I worked my way back up straight away. But I had to start all over again. I mean, where is the fairness in that? Because I took 2 years off, you can't get back to the level you were at. I mean, I had to start all over again and then work my way all the way up to the top. I went there, then after that I ended up being Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the university, which was even higher than what I was before. But I just had to reprove to everyone that I was able to pick myself up and start over. And one other thing is they saw me as a threat because I had two young daughters. And they saw me as, not as a threat, they saw me that I'll be distracted because I've got young daughters and I won't do my job well. And then there was this other position which I had tried to get, and they gave it to the man because he had 2 young daughters as well, but his wife will take care of the daughters. So they gave him the job. Little did they find out that he was the one that was taking care of the daughters. And so anyway, that was a bit of my career where, it's something that I teach to all the young people that I mentor, etc. If you look at my career pathway, it looks like it's a nice, beautiful, straight line, but it's not. It's ups and downs, but eventually it goes up, but you just have to determine it and just stick with it.
What a great role model for younger ones. Vasso, of all your extraordinary, achievements, is there one highlight that you could briefly mention?
I was in Greece many times, but on the occasion 2018, I got an award. There was a big ceremony, and I got this award from the president of Greece at the time. And this lady comes up to me, and she says, "Oh, Vasso Apostolopoulos, χάρηκα που σε γνώρισα." I'm like, "Oh, ωραία." I'm like, she was so excited to meet me. She said, 20 years ago, I took your vaccine for breast cancer.
Oh.
And because of you, I'm alive today. And I saw my daughters grow up, and now, I'm alive. I know the results. Now we have the 27-year follow-up of a phase 3 clinical trial that we did. That study, we had a multi-center study, but we had one of the sites was in Greece as well, Prolypsis in Athens. Now we've got 27-year follow-up data. The women that took the vaccine are all alive and well. Some actually have passed away from old age now. But the group that didn't take the vaccine, 60% of them have passed away. But I know the results. I mean, they're extraordinary. But I've never met the patients because I just know numbers. I'm not the clinician. The clinician's who takes care of the patients. I just get the results. But seeing those results, I knew the results, but the patient, I just got goosebumps. Like that was the best feeling in my life.
Yeah.
Which was really, really good. And I just to finish off, we just completed a phase 1 clinical trial in Greece on a vaccine or immunomodulator for multiple sclerosis. And now we're going to start a phase 2 study.
Fantastic. Wow. Now, having just heard your challenging time in your career path, Vasso, is perhaps the perfect introduction to you, Melina. Dr. Melina Georgousakis. Melina, your early lab researcher career took a very different, impactful direction. Can you tell us about the highlight of your amazing change-making career so far and what led you there?
Yeah, thank you, Helen, and for the beautiful storytelling, Vasso, because it is pretty much the purpose of my career right now. And I just also want to acknowledge that we are on Ngunnawal land, and a land that's built on a culture of connection, community and storytelling. And I think First Nations cultures has a very lot of intersect with Greek, because what we've heard today is the importance of community, but also telling a good story and having a good chat, so which all Greeks know very well. So my career did start in the lab. My connection with my Greek culture is a bit unique to some of the others that we've heard this morning. My dad is Greek, he's from Crete, Hanya, and my mother is Australian, from a farming community up in Queensland. So I've connected with my Greek culture and what it means to be Greek and how that's influenced me a lot later in my life, because I was not raised among the Greek community. It's only now that I hear these stories and these values and these philosophies and traits that I can now see in myself and how much they came from my yaya, my thea, my theos, and how much they've been passed down to me. So no one in my family went to university, and all I knew is that I wanted to make a difference to the lives of people. And it was a great biology teacher, you know, the importance of education, who I knew that it was through health that I was going to do this. So not knowing anything about higher degrees or what a scientist was, or what this PhD thing that could get you to potentially do research that could make a difference, I just followed a career path that meant a lot to me. And I ended up in the lab and I was researching vaccines. And I had a few career pivots, which ended up to where I am now. The first was going to India. And when I was in the lab, I was creating a vaccine against a bug called Group A strep. And I had this vaccine that was going to change lives. And then I went to India, where the incidence of this disease was quite strong. And I realised the way that we were making vaccines in the lab were the type of vaccines that were never going to get to the communities who needed them the most. They were expensive, you wouldn't be able to keep them cold, you didn't have the appropriately trained workforce to administer them. And that was my first career pivot. I hung up my lab coat and I moved into immunisation policy, because it's only if we can shift implementation science, how we not just do great research, but how do we get it to the people who need it the most, that you need to have that as well to have a big impact. It was there when I was doing immunisation policy that my career was progressing. I had ambitions to hold leadership roles. I was also getting married, thinking about having children, wanting to buy a house. For those who don't know about research and academia, researchers are funded on government grants, which are short-term contracts. There is no continuity, there is no certainty, and all of those things impact your ability to sustain in this career. Rather than thinking I could get through this, I thought there was a failure in myself and I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave a career where I was having great success, and it was a career that I loved. And when I started talking to others, I realised that it had nothing to do to the failure of myself. It actually had a lot to do with the failure of the scientific system. And they weren't created or set up for everyone to thrive. And what I found out, that despite 60% of the healthcare and medical research workforce being women, only 20% make it to leadership roles. And the story that Vasso shared, is unique because many women don't go back. And we have this massive attrition of brilliant talent in our sector. And we also see this stagnation of that ceiling really early on where they stay in more junior roles. And all of this potential, which you are now seeing here, isn't actually happening. So I did my next career pivot, I realised that the way that I could have the greatest impact on health was actually not being a health researcher, but how can I serve the sector and particularly serve the women in it, and to create a space where they can truly thrive, but also have an impact on all of us sitting in this room. And my one story, and it might lead to what you're going to ask, but it's so beautiful, pass on from Vasso, is maybe what I'm proud of.
Yes,
Was that the question?
Yeah. No, but go for it.
I'll go for it. Well, only because it just brings to life Vasso's story so well. Career breaks. And we need to acknowledge that a lot of these unpaid caring responsibilities are held by women, and whether it's small children, elderly parents, people around you who need support. So one of the initiatives through my organisation, Franklin Women, which we launched, was a carers scholarship. And what that scholarship was not to support women to fund them to get to career-defining opportunities, to get Vasso at that conference, to make sure Maria was taking part in this innovation workshop. It wasn't to support them. The universities and the institutes supported them. But what they did not see is the hustle going on in the background for that woman to accept that opportunity and turn up. They needed to find childcare. How are they going to get someone to look after their elderly parent? There's a financial and logistical burden that gets in the way that's not recognised. So we launched a carers scholarship. Our community collectively invested in it, and that has supported over 70 women now over the past 10 years. We gave them funds to make sure that they could pay for a mother to fly over from Greece to look after their child. They could pay for extra days in childcare. They can support their partner to take time off work to travel with them, whatever they needed to make sure that they could take advantage of that career opportunity. So in those 2 years, they had that track record that they were just as competitive as anyone else going for that role, and to make sure they keep progressing in their career. And that, honestly, hearing what you've shared, Vasso, is what I'm most proud of.
Oh dear. Look, there is so much more that we could share with you, but we are at time. I just also wanted to, share with you that these women are not just extraordinary in their own rights, but one of the key drivers for them is sharing, connecting, mentoring and leading that next generation of researchers to success. And that may not have come through, but in talking to them I can tell you that is a key fundamental driving force for each and every one of them. Do we have time for a question or not, Stegs? Maybe not. One question? Okay. Okay. Thank you to our panellists. Thank you, audience. Great.